Chapter 1521. At the same time, Tang Wuling seized the initiative for the first time in his matches and pounced directly toward the center of the vast expanse of sand like a hunting falcon. The air around him began to warp, and all of the sand that was spreading through the area suddenly converged toward the center, almost instantly forming back into Liu Yixing. Liu Yixing wore a completely dumbstruck expression, clearly having no idea what had just happened. Lightning surged over the bluish-purple scales that had appeared on Tang Wuling's right hand, and he reached out directly toward Liu Yixing. After only a split-second delay, Liu Yixing immediately returned to his senses, and he shot back like lightning while trying to disintegrate into sand again. At the same time, countless grains of sand shot forth toward Tang Wuling like a barrage of speeding arrows. The palm of Tang Wuling's dragon claw suddenly turned a blackish-purple color, and a vast expanse of lightning erupted forth while the air around Tang Wuling warped once again. All of a sudden, Liu Yixing reappeared at the exact spot where he had been a moment ago, and Tang Wuling's electric dragon claw was already waiting for him there. It was as if Liu Yixing had rushed into the attack on his own. Specks of light appeared all over Liu Yixing's body as he attempted to release his battle armor, but a burst of enormous repulsive force suddenly erupted out of the palm of Tang Wuling's right hand. Liu Yixing was struck by a rush of dizziness, and his connection with his own battle armor was instantly severed. Lightning crackled all over Liu Yixing's body as he was caught in Tang Wuling's grasp, and in that instant, Tang Wuling resembled an insurmountable lightning god. All right, the match has begun, and Oolong Yu is taking the initiative in this match. What's going on? Why has Liu Yixing returned to his human form? Hold on, judging from his expression, he doesn't appear to have done so voluntarily. My god. The match is over. That's right, the highly anticipated match between two titled Douluo was over before I could even muster up a complete sentence. Liu Yixing hadn't even managed to unleash any of his soul skills before he was steamrolled. This was the result of a combination of Tang Wuling's time reversal domain and Dragon Emperor restriction techniques. Following the breakthrough Tang Wuling had made in his spiritual power, his spiritual domain had naturally been enhanced as well. There was simply far too huge a disparity between the spiritual powers of Tang Wuling and Liu Yixing, so the latter was completely crushed. Tang Wuling hadn't given Liu Yixing any chances in that match. Due to the warping of light rays caused by the time reversal domain, it seemed that Liu Yixing had suddenly teleported, and only he and Tang Wuling knew exactly what had happened. In the eyes of the spectators, it appeared that Liu Yixing withdrew his martial soul, then rushed headfirst into Tang Wuling's attack. Grains of sand fell onto the competition platform while emitting a faint hissing sound, clearly indicating that they were laced with lethal poison. In order to defeat Tang Wuling, Liu Yixing had pulled out all the stops. He knew that he was no match for Tang Wuling, so he had fused poison into his sand, but he didn't even get a chance to make use of the poison before he was crushed by Tang Wuling. Tang Wuling held Liu Yixing away in a disdainful manner before departing in an expressionless manner, and Liu Yixing fell to the ground, convulsing uncontrollably. Kaiangyu's Hanting looked on in a flabbergasted manner as Tang Wuling stopped in front of the rostrum, then seemingly said something before continuing to depart, not even sparing so much as a second glance at Liu Yixing. Lan Foizi also had no idea what had happened during that match, and all of a sudden, she didn't feel as frustrated by the fact that Tang Wuling had caught her in a stranglehold so easily. Yuna stood on the rostrum, and her calm expression did nothing to disguise the emotions raging in her eyes. Tang Wuling had indeed said something to the rostrum, and it had only been audible to her. I'll never give up. If anyone had managed to figure out what had happened during that match, then it was Yuna. Tang Wuling had displayed the full extent of his powers during this match. Under the disguise of his lightning, he had instantly crushed his opponent with his time reversal domain and Dragon Emperor break. He had even unleashed a spiritual attack against Liu Yixing while controlling him with his lightning. As a result, even Liu Yixing wouldn't be able to recall what had happened during the battle. As such, not only had Tang Wuling defeated his opponent extremely quickly, he had managed to conceal his abilities as well. After emerging from the Bright City Sports Stadium, Tang Wuling gave Yuanan Yui a call. Have you made up your mind, Yuanan? I have. After this Joust for a Spouse event, I'm going to return home to see my father. Shishi will also be coming with me. All right, that sounds like a solid plan. Feel free to contact me at any time if you need me. I'll take care of everything over at the academy. Tang Wuling said. Thank you. Yuanan Yui wasn't one to display much emotion, so those two simple words were enough to express her feelings. If Tang Wuling hadn't withstood Yuanan Zenshin's 3 attacks, perhaps she would still be completely oblivious to these matters. After learning the truth, she had decided to visit her father, then listen to her grandfather's advice. After ending the call, Tang Wuling made no effort to disguise himself as he made his way back to the Blacksmith Association. He had already become quite famous from his previous matches, but he was currently giving off a forbidding aura that convinced people against approaching him. All of a sudden, Tang Wuling seemed to have sensed something, and he immediately cast his gaze toward a certain direction. At the end of the street stood a man in a set of very normal clothing. He wore a wide brim hat that was tilted downward to conceal his facial features, but Tang Wuling was able to immediately sense his presence. This was a chilling sensation that only arose when he was in life-threatening danger. Even though Tang Wuling was currently in the bustling center of Bright City, he felt like they were the only two people in this world. The man stopped in his tracks and stuck his hands into his pockets, but his aura was only becoming more and more pronounced. Even with Tang Wuling's powers, he was struck by a sense of asphyxiation. After a brief hesitation, Tang Wuling made his way directly toward the man as he knew that he wouldn't be able to avoid him. At this distance, it would be impossible for him to escape or call for help. The man had released his aura without any fear of being noticed, so he clearly wanted Tang Wuling to detect his presence. As Tang Wuling drew closer, he was able to glean the man's appearance. Chapter 1522. This was a burly man who was over 2 meters tall with solid cords of muscle bulging under his clothes. However, despite his appearance, none of the passers-by seemed to have noticed him. Only after Tang Wuling had reached him did the burly man raise his head to reveal a set of facial features that looked as if they had been chiseled out of marble. A threatening light flashed in his eyes as he said, I finally found you. Tang Wuling's entire body was tensed up, and both his soul core and dragon core were ready to erupt at a moment's notice. He knew that if he wanted to get away, he would have to at least withstand one attack from the man and cause a massive commotion. The Battle God Hall was situated in Bright City, and he was counting on them to rescue him. As his spiritual power had become more advanced, his judgment had also become sharper, and he could clearly sense that this man was even more dangerous than Yuanan Zenshin. He was definitely no less powerful than Infernal King Douluo Harissa, which meant that he was a quasi-god. There was most likely no one else in Bright City who could compare with his power, and the most concerning thing to Tang Wuling was that he had no idea who this was. The first possibility that sprang into his mind was that this man was from the Holy Spirit cult. In the face of this immense pressure, Tang Wuling's latent potential was being activated to a great extent, and countless thoughts were flying through his mind. His greatest asset was the 2 remaining chances to use unpredictable storm left to him by his father, but he had no idea how to activate it. How are you related to Tang San? The burly man asked. No one had ever asked Tang Wuling this question before, and this was his biggest secret, so his first reaction to this question was one of astonishment. He clearly wasn't expecting to be posed such a question. Tang Wuling had considered countless reasons why the burly man had sought him out, but never did he think that the man would ask him something like this. Answer me and I'll let you live. A burst of killing intent began to emanate from the burly man's body, striking Tang Wuling with a sense of asphyxiation. Tang Wuling raised his head with a steely look in his eyes. How do you know I'm related to Tang San? Your martial soul is the Blue Silver Emperor, and Tang San was the only one who possessed that martial soul. Tang San hasn't left any descendants in this world, so this martial soul shouldn't exist. The burly man said. Tang Wuling faltered slightly upon hearing this. He hadn't expected the man to have analyzed the matter from that perspective, and he didn't know whether to admit the truth or not. This man was clearly extremely powerful, but he didn't know whether the man was friend or foe. If he were to admit the truth only for it to be spread, then he could be in a world of trouble. The child of a god would present an enormous amount of temptation to the limit Douluos of this world seeking to make that final breakthrough. It was very likely that he would be captured and studied like some type of lab rat. However, if he didn't tell the truth, would he be able to escape from this man? Just as Tang Wuling was hesitating about how to proceed, the burly man suddenly harumphed coldly before reaching out toward his shoulder. All of a sudden, Tang Wuling felt as if there were a mountain crashing down toward him, and it seemed that the entire world around him had instantly congealed. This was clearly the power of laws. He had only just begun to familiarize himself with the laws of heaven and earth, but this man seemed to have completely mastered the utilization of the power of laws, and there was a massive disparity between the two. Tang Wuling's eyes instantly turned golden, and his right hand transformed into a claw as he grabbed toward the burly man's hand, unleashing his abridged Dragon Emperor break in the process. The surrounding air twisted and warped, and the oncoming power of laws began to tremor, even showing signs of collapsing. The burly man was rather taken aback by this, but his right hand suddenly seemed to expand. The surrounding area instantly became blurry and indistinct, and Tang Wuling felt like there was a hand-shaped mountain descending toward him from above. Tang Wuling gritted his teeth and resisted with all his might. The mountain abruptly disintegrated, and his dragon emperor break finally took effect, freeing him from the enormous pressure he was being placed under. However, the burly man's hand still managed to grab onto his shoulder. He had managed to restrict the man's soul skill, but was unable to restrict his powerful hand. His shoulder was struck by a numb sensation, and he felt like all of his power had been instantly suppressed. The burly man smiled and said, "Not bad. You've improved since last time." Before Tang Wuling had a chance to interpret his words, the surrounding air suddenly twisted and warped, and he instantly vanished on the spot. Was this instantaneous teleportation? Just how powerful was this man to be able to do this? The entire world blurred around Tang Wuling, and the immense spatial pressure caused him to reflexively release his own soul power. Strangely enough, the burly man hadn't sealed away his power, so he was able to draw upon it at will. It was just that he couldn't release this power out of his own body. Everything gradually became clearer again amid a flash of light, and Tang Wuling was struck by a rush of intense dizziness, but he also found himself breathing in a lungful of incredibly fresh air. He focused his attention to find that he had arrived in a world that was full of life essence. Everything around him was covered in lush greenery, and the temperature was also just right, making for a very comfortable environment. This is the Myriad Beast Plain. Indeed, the Myriad Beast Plain was the only place other than the Great Star Dou Forest where he had seen such an environment. On top of that, this man came from none other than the Myriad Beast Plain. It seemed that he was able to traverse between this plain and the Douluo continent at will. The burly man smiled and said, "You're a smart kid. Now then, give me your answer." Tang Wuling turned to look at the burly man, and he finally figured out who this man was. "You're the Titan giant ape. Looks like I guessed right that day." Tang Wuling's voice was trembling slightly. "So you know of me?" The burly man said as his eyes narrowed slightly. A wry smile appeared on Tang Wuling's face. "Everyone who knows about Tang San's history knows of you as well. You're a legendary figure on the Douluo continent." The burly man chuckled. "Is that so? I didn't think you'd figure it out so quickly." "All right, that's enough chit-chat. Answer my question. If your answer doesn't satisfy me, I wouldn't be opposed to making you into fertilizer for this place. This small world isn't very stable and requires more energy to sustain. With your powers and your basic mastery of the power of laws, you'll be the perfect fertilizer for this small world." Tang Wuling said, "If you really are the Titan giant ape and Sky Azure bull python, then you shouldn't be doing this. Aren't you supposed to be good friends of Tang San? You even sacrificed yourselves to help him in the past." A furious look suddenly appeared in the burly man's eyes. "That's all in the past. At that time, soul beasts were the rulers of this world, and you humans were only working to build cities and survive. But now, there is no space left on the Douluo continent for soul beasts to inhabit. If we hadn't created this small world to preserve some soul beasts, all soul beasts would have gone extinct long ago. The greed of you humans has led to the death of all soul beasts." Tang San's son-in-law attempted to find a way to allow human soul masters and soul beasts to coexist in peace, thereby leading to the creation of soul spirits and the spirit pagoda. But little did he know that the spirit pagoda would become the main culprits behind the extinction of all soul beasts. Chapter 1523. Tang Wuling heaved a faint sigh. He had to admit that humans were greedy by nature. In the beginning, it could have been argued that they had hunted soul beasts for survival, but after humans became more powerful than soul beasts, the dynamic completely shifted. Humans began to slaughter soul beasts with reckless abandon for personal profit, and the spirit pagoda was even using soul beasts to conduct research. However, humans were also beginning to experience the side effects stemming from the collapse of the ecosystem and the waning life force energy on the Douluo continent. The Douluo continent had once belonged to soul beasts, and even though soul beasts also slaughtered one another, they did so with restraint. But what about humans? Human wants and needs were limitless, and they slaughtered soul beasts and tapped into all of the planet's resources without any reservation. Now, the planet was standing on its last legs, and the human race had no choice but to explore outer space for the sake of future generations. Tang Wuling had no counter against the burly man's accusations, nor did he want to argue this point. In the face of Tang Wuling's silence, the burly man also calmed down a little. "My patience is limited. Tell me how you're related to Tang San. I'm sure that you know that you have no chance of escaping from me. I've already sealed the laws of this entire plane, so even she won't be able to come in and rescue you." Tang Wuling didn't know whom the burly man was referring to, but he could guess that this person was the owner of the giant silver claw that had saved him last time. Was that a soul beast as well? "You're the Titan giant ape," Tang Wuling suddenly said. The burly man faltered slightly before asking, "Why do you say that?" Tang Wuling replied, "Because of your extreme strength." Having recently clashed with Yuan and Zenshin, he was well aware of what it was like to face ultimate strength. If Yuan and Zenshin had reached the pinnacle of strength, then this man had mastered the law of strength. The burly man's brows furrowed slightly. "Answer my question." However, Tang Wuling continued with his analysis. "If you're the Titan giant ape, then your name should be Erming, right?" A reminiscent look appeared in the burly man's eyes upon hearing this, and he murmured, "It's been many years since anyone's called me by that name." Tang Wuling took a deep breath, then continued, "If you're Erming, then I can tell you that Tang San is my father." Tang Wuling felt chills run down his spine as he uttered those words. This was an indescribable sense of excitement, and it stemmed from the fact that this was the first time he was admitting to anyone that Tang San was his father. Even he didn't know what other emotions were intermingled with this excitement, but he knew that in that instant, he was immensely proud of having such a father. The burly man's hands instantly balled up into tight fists, and he asked in an incredulous voice, "You're Tang San's son, Tang Wuling. Does that mean Tang Wutong is your sister?" A complex look appeared in Tang Wuling's eyes. "Is Tang Wutong your name? All I know is that I have a sister. Come with me." Instead of asking any further questions, Erming waved a hand toward Tang Wuling before rising up into the air. Tang Wuling followed along behind him, and was led away into the distance. Perhaps it was due to the aura emanating from Erming's body, but no soul beasts dared to approach them. Every part of the forest that Erming passed through seemed to be extremely quiet. Tang Wuling's heart was filled with excitement. He had been searching for an opportunity to enter the Myriad Beast Plane again in order to verify the identities of these two, and his wish had been granted. At this point, he had calmed down a little, and he was even more convinced about the authenticity of their identities, as only they would be aware that the Blue Silver Emperor Marshal soul belongs only to Tang San. It was exactly because they were extremely familiar with his father that they had sought him out over something like this. In a sense, it could be said that Erming was the original ancestor of Yuan and Yui's family. On top of that, they were good friends of his parents, so they definitely weren't going to hurt him. With the power that Erming had displayed, he would benefit the Tang sect and Shrek Academy immensely if Tang Wuling could garner his support. However, it seemed that he harbored a lot of resentment toward humans, and that was quite troublesome. Of course, the most important thing now was that he had found a legendary figure who truly knew his parents. He would be able to gather more information about his parents from them, and that would assist him greatly in his search for his parents in the future. Erming brought Tang Wuling to the small lake that he had been to once before, then descended beside the lake. "I've brought him back, big brother." Erming yelled. The surface of the lake rippled and surged, and a massive cow's head slowly emerged. In contrast with a normal cow's head, this head was proportionally slightly narrower, somewhat resembling a dragon's head, and it was entirely azure in color with countless fine scales riddling its surface. As the giant head appeared, the entire lake was illuminated by azure light, and in the next instant, the azure light had risen up into the air before landing beside Erming and Tang Wuling. Tang Wuling focused his gaze and discovered that this was a tall and broad man who was giving off a peculiar yet barely detectable aura. It wasn't a powerful aura, it simply seemed like it was a part of this world to begin with. It was exactly due to Tang Wuling's exceptional spiritual power that he was able to sense that as this man appeared, the entire space in the surrounding area seemed to have undergone some type of change. In a sense, it could be said that Erming and this man were the planar rulers of the Myriad Beast Plane. Tang Wuling had absolute confidence in this assessment as it was the only explanation for this feeling that he was currently experiencing. This was something that he had never felt from any powerful being he had encountered in the past, and it could be said that in this plane, they were true gods. Even infernal King Douluo Harissa wouldn't have a sliver of a chance of defeating them here. The Sky Azure bull python stared intently at Tang Wuling, as if he were trying to see right through him. Meanwhile, Erming said, "He says he's Tang San's son." The Sky Azure bull python's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. "How can you prove that?" Tang Wuling replied, "If you really are friends of my parents, then of course I can verify my identity. But how can you prove to me that you are still the same friends my parents once had?" The Sky Azure bull python smiled, and said, "You have no choice here. Only by proving your own identity can you hope to survive." Chapter 1524. Tang Wuling's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this. He had an unyielding personality, and a burst of stubbornness instinctively erupted in his heart. He pursed his lips tightly, and said, "You're using your power to force your will upon others. Even if you really are friends of my parents, I don't like you." The Sky Azure bull python and the Titan giant ape exchanged a slightly surprised glance, and both of them smiled with amusement. "So what's your choice?" The Sky Azure Ball Python asked. A smile also suddenly appeared on Tang Wulin's face. I don't like you, but I'll still prove my identity to you as my life doesn't just belong to me. It also belongs to my friends, Shrek Academy, and the Tang sect. I have to keep living, and even more importantly, I have to go and find my family in the future. I can't die before I've met them. Stubbornness wasn't something to be proud of. This was something that he had learned back on the demonic island. Through that horrific experience, he had learned the importance of weighing up the consequences of different actions. Prior to his visit to the demonic island, perhaps he would have resisted even if it would have led to his demise. But now, he was mature enough to see the bigger picture. A true man knew when to resist and when to fold. Dying a resilient death would be very valiant, but what would happen to the Tang sect? To Shrek Academy? To his friends and family? How dire would the consequences of that rash decision be? Interesting. All right, show us your proof then. You look like you're very confident. The Sky Azure Ball Python said in a calm manner. Tang Wulin said, if you identified me based on my blue silver emperor, then I have something else that you should recognize as well. He raised his right hand as he spoke, and a streak of golden light appeared in his grasp, transforming into a peerlessly sharp jewel tip spear with a projection of a giant golden dragon revolving around it. The Titan giant ape immediately exclaimed, that's the golden dragon spear. No, it's not quite the same. It's sharper than back when Wutong used it. The Sky Azure Ball Python said as he stared intently at the spear in Tang Wulin's hand. Tang Wulin explained, that's because it's been sharpened. According to legends, the golden dragon spear was constructed from the rib of the golden dragon king or dragon god, and it possesses the special ability to devour all energy. Thankfully, I found the dragon slaying saber, which was the law-enforcing saber of the dragon clan, and through clashes with each other, the dragon slaying saber and golden dragon spear can sharpen one another. So the golden dragon spear has become even more lethal than when I first came into possession of it. The Sky Azure Ball Python paused momentarily before concluding, it's still not enough. In response to the Sky Azure Ball Python's skepticism, Tang Wulin raised his left hand, and a beam of golden light suddenly erupted from his glabella. The Sky Azure Ball Python and Titan giant ape both shuddered in unison at the sight of the golden trident symbol that had appeared on Tang Wulin's glabella, as it was simply far too familiar to them. Tang San and Tang Wutong had both displayed this symbol at some point, and it was the sea god's trident passed down through Tang San's bloodline. Immediately thereafter, an extremely familiar feeling appeared, but the entire myriad beast plane shuddered violently as if it were about to be torn apart. A pillar of golden light appeared in Tang Wulin's grasp out of thin air, and an enormous authoritative aura surged forth. The scintillating golden light completely drowned out the radiance of the golden dragon spear, and a serious look appeared in Tang Wulin's eyes as he pointed the tip of the giant trident directly up toward the heavens. The Sky Azure Ball Python and Titan giant ape's expressions changed drastically, and all of their doubts were instantly erased. Who could possess Tang San's most important divine weapon had he not given it to them? On top of that, the fact that Tang Wulin was able to wield the trident with relative ease indicated that he had at least received partial acknowledgement from it. Right at this moment, a vast expanse of golden light was released from Tang Wulin's body, forming a series of images. There was no sound, but just those images alone were enough to evoke strong emotions within the hearts of the Sky Azure Ball Python and Titan giant ape. To them, the figure in the images was far too familiar. It was none other than sea god Tang San. Tang San's body was looking a little insubstantial, but he really did exist, and he seemed to be communicating something to Tang Wulin within the image. He was bestowing some knowledge upon Tang Wulin in the majestic divine hall, and this was a memory of Tang Wulin's from back when he only knew Tang San as old Tang. He was displaying this through mental manifestation as there was nothing that could better reflect his identity. It was very difficult to mentally manifest a fake memory as there was no way to manifest something that didn't exist. The scenes in the image continued to unfold, beginning with old Tang's lessons, then progressing to Tang San's arrival to save Tang Wulin from a perilous situation, then moving on to Tang San bestowing the golden trident, as well as millennium white clouds, an unpredictable storm upon him. The final scene depicted the infernal lightning vine successfully completing its evolution under Tang San's protection. The hands of both the Sky Azure Ball Python and Titan giant ape balled up into tight fists in unison at the sight of Tang San unleashing his unpredictable storm, and the pressure that they were exerting upon Tang Wulin completely disappeared. The images vanished, and Tang Wulin also awakened from his memories. Put the golden trident away. The plane won't be able to handle it. The Sky Azure Ball Python said in an urgent voice. Golden light flashed from Tang Wulin's hand as he quickly stowed the trident away, and only then did the entire plane stop trembling. The Sky Azure Ball Python and Titan giant ape exchanged a glance, and they could both see their own excitement mirrored in one another's eyes. He's still alive. This is fantastic. Haha, they're probably all still alive. We still have hope. The Titan giant ape chortled with glee, and Tang Wulin was left feeling rather speechless at the sight of such a powerful being acting like an overjoyed child. However, at the same time, he could also clearly sense the heartfelt elation from these two powerful beings. Wulin, you've managed to prove your identity to us. I am Deming, and he is Erming. You can refer to us as uncle. Your father refers to us as brothers, and we've been good friends with your mother ever since she was just a little rabbit. The Sky Azure Ball Python's voice had become a lot gentler, and there was a benevolent look in his eyes as he appraised Tang Wulin. Tang Wulin was also feeling very excited. There was no need for him to verify the identities of these two as their quasi-god level powers were enough to tell him everything. If they hadn't identified the fact that he could be a descendant of Tang San's, then they wouldn't have sought him out. Tang Wulin pays his respects to his uncles. Tang Wulin said as he extended a respectful bow. Chapter 1525. The Sky Azure Ball Python laid a hand on his arm and said, we're all family. There's no need for such formalities. Back when your sister was around, she was treating us like her playthings. Only after she met that Huo Yua kid did she finally settle down. In the end, she and Huo Yua had to endure a lot of hardships before they could be together. Tang Wulin's eyes widened upon hearing this. Is the dragon butterfly Douluo really my sister? This was something that he had never been able to ascertain, and there wasn't even concrete proof that Tang Wutong was Tang San's daughter. It had merely been speculated in historical records, but never actually verified. The Sky Azure Ball Python nodded and said, around 10,000 years ago, your sister snuck down from the divine realm in her teens to play on the Douluo continent. At the time, your parents knew about this, and they intentionally allowed her to do this. However, they also asked me and Erming to follow her to the Douluo continent to protect her. Huo Yua had to undergo many trials set by us before he finally became your brother-in-law. He was also tortured quite a bit by your father as well. After all, a father is generally never satisfied with a son-in-law. Tang Wulin folded slightly upon hearing this. Even though he had never experienced any of this, he was still extremely eager to hear more about his sister from the Sky Azure Ball Python. What happened after that, Uncle Deming? What happened to the divine realm? My father only told me that it had been swept elsewhere by spatial turbulence, and that he wouldn't be able to return in the near future. Spatial turbulence? What did he tell you? Just like Tang Wulin was eager to hear about his family, Deming and Erming were very interested in news about the divine realm. Erming was the one who had raised the question, but Deming interjected, let's tell Wulin what we know, then listen to what Wulin has to say. That way, we won't be talking over one another. Erming was very eager to hear more, but he still nodded in agreement. Deming continued, most of the historical records you humans have about Tang San are true because many of those records were left behind by him. Tang San told us that he actually didn't belong to this world. Instead, he transmigrated from another large plane that was devoid of soul masters, and many of the Tang sect's hidden weapons and the cultivation methods recorded by the Tang sect came from that plane. They were merely refined so that they would be more suitable for soul masters of our plane to cultivate. To be honest, we were very much in opposition when your mother decided to be with Tang San. After all, she was a 100,000-year-old soul beast, and I'm sure you know how alluring 100,000-year-old soul beasts are to human soul masters. However, she insisted on being reborn as a human, and we couldn't stop her. After that, your mother entered a relationship with Tang San, but never did we think that she would go on to sacrifice herself to become a soul ring for your father. At the time, we wanted nothing better than to have Tang San killed. Fortunately, Tang San was a good man who was willing to resurrect your mother at all costs. In the end, he dismembered his own arm to release his soul bone in order to assist your mother in regaining her human form. At the time, we also chose to sacrifice ourselves to become a part of his power to assist in your mother's resurrections. After that, Tang San inherited the god seats of the sea god and Asura god, and defeated Bibi Dom and Chen Ringshu in the final battle to save the entire continent from a major crisis. The Douluo continent of that time was vastly different to how it is now. Natural energies were vastly abundant, and the plane was extremely powerful, allowing it to be unaffected even after facilitating a battle between gods. A dejected look appeared in Deming's eyes as he spoke. Wulin, I'm sure you sensed how this small plane began to tremble tremble as you released your golden trident. If a battle between gods were to take place in this plane, it would instantly be torn apart, and all of the living beings residing within the plane would be killed. This plane is too weak and unstable on its own, so it can only survive while it's attached to a large plane like the Douluo continent. Tang Wuling nodded in response. He had indeed sensed this. The Sky Azure ball python continued. The Douluo star is actually also a plane, but it's far more powerful than this small plane of ours. Every plane has its own laws, and the power of these laws is influenced by the plane itself. 20,000 years ago was when the Douluo continent plane was at its most powerful. At the time, the entire plane was rich with life energy, and this energy is the key to nurturing all things and consolidating the power of laws. The Douluo continent of that era was powerful enough to facilitate a battle between four first-rank gods. But now, Deming gave a cold chuckle before continuing. If such a battle were to take place now, it's very likely that an irreparable time and spatial rift would be torn open, tearing the entire continent apart and severely impacting the entire Douluo star. Tang Wuling's expression changed drastically upon hearing this. Why? Because of you humans. Ming said in an enraged manner, I admit that humans possess intelligence unparalleled by soul beasts. You are adept at creating all types of things, but you're even more proficient at destroying things. As you humans have become more powerful, the habitats of soul beasts have constantly been whittled down. You've tapped into too much of the planet's resources, destroying much of its life energy, and even the Great Star Dou Forest has ceased to exist now. In particular, the 10,000 years following the arrival of the Sun-Moon continent as a result of continental drift is the period of time where technology on the Douluo continent advanced at the fastest rate, but also when life energy seeped out of the Douluo continent at the most alarming rate. Both Deming and Ming heaved a full-on sigh in unison. Tang Wuling's brows furrowed tightly as he asked, hasn't anyone realized this and sought to change things? Deming replied in a grim voice, your brother-in-law did, and we even helped him in creating his soul spirit system in an effort to reduce the slaughter of soul beasts. But little did we know that the spirit pagoda would go on to become the one to ruin the entire soul beast world. Tang Wuling asked, can't my brother-in-law do anything about this? Isn't he a god as well? Are gods not permitted to interfere with the matters on the Douluo continent? A wry smile appeared on Deming's face as he replied, under normal circumstances, he would be able to. Divine realms exist to protect the planes that they have jurisdiction over, and in the past, our divine realm was a huge yet very harmonious realm. It had jurisdiction over many planes, and your father was one of the 5 god kings of the divine realm committee. Following the disappearance of the gods of kindness and evil, your father became the head of the 5 god kings, overseeing the jurisdiction of the entire divine realm and all the planes. Ming said, if the divine realm was still around, none of this would have happened, and we wouldn't be in such a terrible situation. However, the divine realm suddenly vanished close to 10,000 years ago, and you humans had developed so rapidly precisely because there's no longer a divine realm to keep you all in check. At this rate, all of the life energy on this entire plane is going to be exhausted. Just as Tang Wuling was about to say something, Deming asked, do you know of the abyssal plane? It became connected to our Douluo continent around 6,000 years ago. Tang Wuling nodded in response. Deming chuckled coldly. That's an example of you humans shooting yourselves in the foot. Due to the rapid loss of life energy on the Douluo continent plane, vulnerable points have appeared in the plane of laws, and that's been taken advantage of by the abyssal plane. Countless sacrifices were made to seal that abyssal passageway, but as long as the Douluo continent's life energy remains in this dire state, there's no way to completely cut off this connection, and an even more severe calamity will erupt sooner or later. There are more planes than just the abyssal plane looking to invade the Douluo continent, and if things continue like this, the Douluo continent will inevitably completely collapse someday. Chapter 1526. Tang Wuling drew a sharp breath upon hearing this. He had witnessed the horrors of the abyssal plane in person, but never did he think that the connection between the two planes had been forged as a result of anything other than a coincidence. The Sky Azure ball python continued. This myriad beast plane is actually something that Ming and I developed from a small plane. At the time, your sister and brother-in-law left for the divine realm, but we preferred to stay on the Douluo continent, and to assuage our boredom, we attempted to create a habitat for ourselves in this small plane. Never did we think that it would become the final habitat of all soul beasts someday. We were extremely shocked and enraged when we discovered that you humans were posing a threat to the entire soul beast world, and we immediately tried to contact Tang San. However, we discovered that there was no way to contact the divine realm. Just as you humans have speculated, the divine realm has disappeared. The two of us can't contend with the entire human race, so we could only try to bring more soul beasts into this plane. Otherwise, the entire soul beast world really would be headed toward extinction. Tang Wuling could clearly sense the hatred in Deming and Ming's voices whenever they mentioned humans, and this filled him with melancholy. He asked, so why is it that the myriad beast plane is now connected to the spirit pagoda? Why are you allowing people to enter this plane to continue killing soul beasts? Deming chuckled coldly in response. Don't you worry about that. We have our own objectives. For some reason, a chill suddenly ran down Tang Wuling's spine upon hearing this, and he could sense that they were up to no good. I don't know what to say. All I can tell you is that not all humans are bad. I'm sure you're aware of this. After all, my father and brother-in-law are both very good people, so please don't hate all humans. Tang Wuling implored. A gentle look appeared in Deming's eyes as he said, we know that, and we're not going to target all humans as that would be far too unfair. All right, that's all we have to tell you. Tell us what your father told you and what the current situation in the divine realm is like. Tang Wuling nodded in response before providing a recount of events, beginning from when the Golden Dragon King had injected its destructive essence into his body prior to its death, thereby forcing his parents to send him down to the Douluo continent. He then disclosed what Tang San had told him about spatial turbulence, a clash between divine realms. Deming and Ming were both stunned to hear that Tang San was currently leading the divine realm in battle against other distant divine realms. Tang Wuling nodded in response. My father gave me some coordinates, and he told me that I could go and search for them after I became a god. The coordinates work both ways, and I have to be sufficiently powerful to activate them. When that time comes, they should be able to return to me as well. Deming and Ming exchanged a glance, and the former sighed. I see. Who would have thought that the mighty divine realm would encounter such issues? It seems that some unrest must have arisen in the divine realm. Otherwise, even spatial turbulence wouldn't have been able to sweep it away so easily. Tang Wuling shook his head in response. I don't know about that. My conversation with my father was very brief, and he only told me the most important things. Deming asked, what's the situation like with your Golden Dragon King seals now? Tang Wuling replied, there are 18 Golden Dragon King seals in total, and I've broken 12 of them and absorbed the essence they contain. That's why I've been able to progress so quickly in my cultivation, and the rest of the seals are quite solid for now. As I currently am, I estimate that I should be able to handle breaking 1 or 2 more seals. However, after the 9th seal, each successive seal becomes drastically more perilous to break than the previous one, so even I don't know how many more seals I'll be able to last. According to my father, I should be doing everything in my power to delay the breakage of these seals. Ming nodded in response. Indeed, the Golden Dragon King is no ordinary being. In that case, he suddenly paused here and cast his gaze toward Deming. Deming shook his head at him, then said to Tang Wuling, continue to control your Golden Dragon King seals, and we'll help you if you encounter any issues. However, you'll have to rely on yourself for progression in your cultivation. It's very remarkable that you've been able to achieve mental manifestation at such a young age, and when looking at you, I feel like I'm seeing your father in his youth, so never lose confidence in yourself no matter what. Tang Wuling couldn't help but ask, what's your current situation in this plane? Are you able to come and go as you please? Deming replied, it's not that simple. The two of us are the rulers of the plane, and we control everything here, but conversely, we're unable to leave this plane. Without the support of the planar ruler, this plane will immediately be destroyed by space and time. Even if one of us leaves, it can't be for a long time. I see. Deming continued, I know that you have a lot riding on your shoulders, and we've heard about the situation with Shrek Academy and the Tang sect. However, I'm afraid that we won't be able to assist you with any of that. Tang Wuling was quite taken aback to hear this, not expecting to be turned down even before he had requested assistance from Deming. Deming explained in a solemn voice, we are indebted to your father for reviving us in the divine realm, but at our very core, we are both soul beasts, so we must side with soul beasts at all times. We have no interest in becoming involved in conflicts between you humans, so we won't be lending you our assistance. So what if Shrek Academy is rebuilt? So what if the Tang sect returns to the height of its powers? Neither of them can return the past habitats of our soul beasts back to us. Tang Wuling was quite dejected to hear this, but he still nodded, and said, all right, I'll do my best on my own. Ming patted Tang Wuling's shoulder, and consoled, there's no need to be pessimistic. You already possess many advantages over other soul masters. Don't forget that you are Tang San's son, and back when your father saved the continent from that crisis, he relied solely on himself and his friends. If he could do it, then I'm sure you can too. Also, even though we refuse to become involved in conflicts between humans, you are the son of Tang San and Xiao Wu, and neither of us have any descendants, so you're like a son to us as well. If you're ever in any danger, we'll do everything in our power to save you. Tang Wulin's heart stirred slightly upon hearing this. Did you just say that you have no descendants, Uncle Erming? There's a human family with the surname of Yuanan that's inherited the Titan giant ape martial soul. Are they not related to you? Chapter 1527. What did you say? Erming instantly tightened his grip on Tang Wulin's shoulder, and his emotions also took a drastic turn. Deming quickly slapped his hand away, and said, calm down. Wulin, explain the situation. Thus, Tang Wulin told Deming and Erming about Yuan and Yui and the Yuanan family. Erming. An accusatory look immediately appeared in Deming's eyes. Erming's face suddenly became very flushed, and even though he was an almighty godlike figure in this plane, he was looking like a child who had been caught doing something naughty. I didn't do anything wrong, big brother. It was that girl that I saved last time. At the time, I was in my human form, and she kept on following me around. Through Erming's stuttering explanation, Tang Wulin was able to roughly deduce the situation. It seemed that he really was related to the Yuanan family. On top of that, it seems that the Yuanan family had arisen from Erming's relationship with a human woman. Deming grumbled, I'm not mad about what you did. I'm angry that you abandoned a woman you impregnated. Why haven't I heard about this before? Me? I abandoned her. Erming's eyes widened in a pitiable display as he countered. I never did anything like that, big brother. The time I spent with that woman was the happiest time of my life. How could I have abandoned her? Human love really is something special. Only at that time did I understand why Xiao Wu was so enamored with Tang San. Unfortunately, my story was far different from Xiao Wu's experience in love. Not only did I not abandon her, I was the one who was abandoned. That woman was with me for less than a month, but one day, she suddenly left. She didn't say anything. She simply left behind a note saying that it was over between us. It wasn't my fault, big brother. Tears began to well up in Erming's eyes as he spoke. Deming was also quite stunned to hear this. Having been with Erming for so many years, he was well aware of Erming's personality, and he knew that Erming wasn't one to lie about something like this. It seemed that even after so long had passed, he was still deeply hurt by that experience. Then why did you never tell me about this? Deming asked. A gloomy look appeared on Erming's face. Why would I tell anyone about something so embarrassing? Being abandoned by a woman isn't a glorious chapter of my history. After that, the woman disappeared. Only after hearing the surname Yuanan did I recall that I told her that my name was Yuanan Ming. The surname stems from the phrase primordial gift, which pays homage to the fact that we are indebted to nature for the most primordial gift of life. I didn't know that she was pregnant with my child. Why did she leave? I would have been so happy if she hadn't left. Happy my ass. Deming snapped. It would have never worked out between you two. Your life force is virtually infinite, yet she'll live for just over 100 years at most. Would you still have been happy once she died of old age? Erming's mouth gaped open upon hearing this. I didn't think of that, but I have descendants now. Big brother, I have descendants. This is... Deming gave a resigned shake of his head at the sight of Erming's lack of composure, but at the same time, a hint of sorrow flashed through his eyes. Unlike Erming, he had no descendants. It wasn't that he didn't want to reproduce, it was just that he had to constantly cultivate and become more powerful in his youth, or risk being destroyed in the Great Star Dou Forest. The pressure to become more powerful for the sake of survival constantly weighed upon him, but once he became powerful enough, he was unable to find a suitable partner. He was a mutated soul beast to begin with, and there was no other sky-azurable python in existence. In the soul Master world, soul beasts of different species almost never reproduced, and a soul beast as powerful as him certainly wasn't willing to stoop to that. It seemed that if he wanted descendants, his only choice would have to be to find a human partner. In a sense, they could already be considered to be humans after Tang San had revived them in the divine realm. The older one became, the more they wished to have descendants by their side. Tang Wulin was also very happy. It was naturally a good thing that Yuan and Yui had such a powerful ancestor. This meant that the Titan giant ape family would become far closer with him, which increased the chances that they would become allies to the Tang sect and Shrek Academy in the future. Yuan and Zenshin was a quasi-god level limit Douluo. Even if he were inferior in power to Erming, it wouldn't be by much. Uncle Erming, can you resolve Yuan and Yui's problem? What can we do about her fallen angel bloodline? Before Erming had a chance to say anything, Deming replied in his stead. Does the demonic plane really think it can connect to the Douluo plane through such a desperate method? What a joke. The demonic plane isn't even as powerful as the abyssal plane. The fallen angel martial soul isn't an issue. The main problem is her connection to the demonic plane. Once that connection is severed, it'll only be a martial soul. There's no need for anyone else to step in. You're the most suitable candidate to resolve this issue. Me. Tang Wulin was very perplexed to hear this. Deming smiled, and said, of course, you possess true divine weapons, regardless of whether it's the sea god's trident, dragon-slaying saber, or golden dragon spear. All of them have the power to sever planar connections. In particular, the golden trident is the weapon of a god king. All you have to do is sever the connection between the fallen angel and the demonic plane. The demons in the demonic plane would soil themselves upon sensing the golden trident's skulking aura, and there's no way they'll dare to descend through Yuan and Yui. Tang Wulin was instantly enlightened upon hearing this. He had never considered employing such a course of action before. Erming was already jumping up and down on the spot. Where is she? Take me to see her. I have descendants. Haha, I have descendants. Wulin, you're my lucky star. Erming's elation was very heartwarming for Tang Wulin to see. Both of these were true friends of his parents, so their relation naturally filled him with joy as well. Go on then. Even after living for so many years, you're still as excitable as ever. Deming sighed as he made a resigned shooing motion. Erming chortled with glee. I'll bring her back for you to see, big brother. Ha ha ha, I have descendants. I haven't been this happy in tens of thousands of years. Wulin, is she really beautiful as well? If she's as beautiful as your sister, no, even half as beautiful as that, I'll be satisfied. That girl from back then was quite a beauty. Tang Wulin's lips twitched slightly upon hearing this. Before that, can you show me what my mother and sister look like? Tears began to well up in his eyes as he spoke. He had lived for over 20 years, yet still hadn't ever seen his own birth mother. What could be more cruel than that? Chapter 1528. Erming's elated expression faded slightly, and Deming nodded before pointing a finger forward, conjuring up a light projection. This was a slender young woman with a pair of large eyes that were filled with exuberance. She had a pair of long legs with a glowing smile on her face, and her long brown hair was arranged into a long ponytail that was swaying gently in the breeze. Tang Wulin's vision began to blur with tears as he looked into her bright and vibrant eyes. Mother. He was unable to hold back his tears any longer. He had finally seen her. Even though this was only a projection, he had finally seen his mother. An electric current surged from the base of his spine up to the top of his head, and his entire body began to tremble. Even though this was only a projection, Tang Wulin felt as if he had returned to his mother's side and could hear her voice beside his ear. There was nothing more beautiful and irreplaceable in this world than motherly love. As a child, Tang Wulin had received motherly love from Lan Yue, and Yali was providing the same to him now, but neither of them was his birth mother. Even though he had only caught a glimpse of a projection, the image had branded into the deepest part of his heart. Both Deming and Erming were struck by a sense of melancholy at the sight of the weeping Tang Wulin. Compared to Tang Wulin, Tang Wutong had been far more fortunate. Her parents had protected her in the shadows the entire time that she was on the Douluo continent, but Tang Wulin had been left to fend for himself. The image changed to that of a young woman with long bluish pink hair, and she rested her chin on the shoulder of the first woman to have been depicted. The two of them bore a strong resemblance and looked like sisters, and it was clear to Tang Wulin that this was his sister, Tang Wutong. These were two of his closest loved ones. Even he didn't know how long he stared at the projection before finally closing his eyes, committing their images deep into his memory. Thank you. Let's go, Uncle Erming. Both Deming and Erming could see the determination in Tang Wulin's eyes, and it was undoubtedly the case that he was going to find his parents and sister no matter what. They had seen the same expression on Tang San's face on more than one occasion. Erming draped an arm across Tang Wulin's shoulders and said, don't put too much pressure on yourself. You're still young and have a lot of time. Also, you need to trust in your father. He was a true prodigy of his time, and he misses you just as much as you miss them, so they'll definitely come back. They know where the Douluo continent is. It'll be far easier for them to find their way back than it would be for you to find them. I understand. Tang Wuling nodded firmly in response. The light in the surrounding area warped slightly, and the two of them slowly vanished into thin air. Deming's brows furrowed slightly in contemplation following their departure, and after a long while, he finally sighed as he murmured to himself, "Some things are best left untold." Yuan and Yui was appraising the opponent before her with a cold expression. This was her third round match for the round robin stage, and her opponent was also a Soul Douluo. She was in the 8th group, and even though she was only a Soul Douluo, she was one of the hot favorites, and she had already been rated as a pseudo-titled Douluo. There were even some who proclaimed that she was the most powerful Soul Master below the titled Douluo level, and she had already reached full mastery of her divine cloud vortex fists. All that was needed now was improvement through evolution. Ever since she had met her grandfather and heard the story about her parents, she had been very quiet and subdued. Having left for so many years, she had done everything in her power to forget that chapter of her life, but only after her grandfather appeared before her did she realize that some things couldn't simply be forgotten. During these past few days, she had been constantly plagued by the memory of her father's feeble expression. That was the expression of a man who had lost the will to live. At the time, her heart was filled with hatred over the death of her mother, and that had led her to leave the family to enter Shrek Academy. Ever since that day, she hadn't returned home even once. Only after hearing her grandfather's side of the story did she truly understand how desperate circumstances had been back then. If it weren't for her, her father would have perhaps already followed after her mother. However, she hadn't visited him even once in over 10 years, and the thought of this never failed to make her heart throb with pain. She couldn't wait to go back and see her father, but she was bound by her sense of responsibility and could only leave after completing the task at hand. As such, the first thought that sprang into her mind as she saw her opponent was that she wanted to crush him as quickly as possible, even destroy him and pummel him into the ground. Her opponent was a rotund soul master who resembled a huge ball, and even the spectators questioned where a man of his appearance drew confidence from to enter this joust for a spouse event. Could it be that he thought that the Silver Dragon Princess would choose him? There was no discrimination against fat people here. It was just that the two of them simply didn't match. Begin. As soon as the announcement was made, the fatso sprang into action. Despite his portly frame, he was an agility system soul master, just like Shishi. His ball-shaped body shot forth like a massive cannonball, hurtling directly toward Yuan and Yui while rotating incessantly mid-flight. His martial soul was very interesting. It was the most ordinary rubber ball. However, it had mutated during his cultivation, thereby allowing him to cultivate it to such a powerful extent. As the second most powerful member of Shrek's 7 monsters, Yuan and Yui had always fought fire with fire, and she made a large stride directly toward her opponent. The rotund soul master abruptly landed on the ground and bounced up into the air, but due to his constant rotation, he sprang diagonally forward instead of straight forward, crashing toward Yuan and Yui from the side in an arc trajectory. This was his first soul skill, Curve Ball. The main benefit of this soul skill was its unpredictability, and it allowed him to attack his opponent from any direction and angle as he pleased. Yuan and Yui's footsteps abruptly halted, and she stood still on the ground. When facing such a fast opponent, the best countermeasure was to remain on the spot and wait for the opponent to attack before unleashing a counterattack. Only as the portly soul master began to hurtle directly toward her did Yuan and Yui throw a punch with her right fist. But all of a sudden, the rotund soul master suddenly descended, bouncing onto the ground only around 2 meters away from Yuan and Yui before crashing toward her legs. In that instant, his entire body turned bright red. This was his second soul skill, Explosive Ball. Yuan and Yui reflexively took half a step backward, then lashed out with her other fist toward the ground. But the rotund soul master suddenly stopped, then began to rapidly rotate on the spot a mere 1 meter away from her. His bright red complexion instantly turned orange, and the surrounding temperature was raised dramatically. Only after Yuan and Yui's punch had struck nothing but empty air did the rotund soul master rush toward her again. His timing and utilization of soul skills were both impeccable, and Yuan and Yui raised her left leg, using her knee to withstand the attack. However, right at this moment, yet another massive ball appeared silently behind her, then crashed directly toward her back. This was his 5th soul skill, Twofold Ball, and it was the attack that was truly meant to land the killing blow. Everyone's attention had been drawn to the rotund soul master, but the attack approaching from behind was actually more fearsome. At this moment, no one noticed a muscle-bound man staring intently at the match that was unfolding. Chapter 1529. The rotund soul master crashed into Yuan and Yui's knee, and a violent explosion erupted in a diameter of 30 meters around Yuan and Yui. Immediately thereafter, a second explosion that was even more powerful than the first one erupted. A mushroom cloud rose up from the spot where Yuan and Yui were standing, presenting quite a fearsome sight to behold. Was that it? All of the spectators were astonished. Throughout this entire match, Yuan and Yui had been completely dominated and seemingly allowed her opponent to do anything that he pleased. Both of them were Soul Douluos, and for soul masters of their caliber, this was an extremely fearsome attack. However, right at this moment, a third resounding boom rang out, and the ground trembled violently as a ball-shaped body sprang up out of the mushroom cloud. The mushroom cloud then began to rotate rapidly, forming a massive vortex that compressed toward the center. In the next instant, the ball-shaped body was sent flying out of the vortex like a cannonball before crashing heavily into the protective barrier up above, then bounced down and smashed into the ground, where it was embedded deep into the platform. The vortex dissipated to reveal Yuan and Yui once again, and she looked no different from how she had before. Even her clothes had remained completely unruffled, but there was a layer of faint yellow light around her, and the light was rotating rapidly. Yuan and Yui stomped her right foot violently onto the ground, and the entire competition platform trembled, sending the rotund soul master flying upward. Yuan and Yui then lashed out with her right fist, and in the face of her devastating punch, the entire space up ahead began to twist and warp. She had drawn a lot of inspiration from the third punch that Yuan and Zenshin had unleashed against Tang Wuling, and even though her punch was devoid of the power of laws, it bore some of the power of Yuan and Zenshin's attack from that day. As soon as the rotund soul master was sent flying up into the air, he had already adopted his martial soul true body, transforming into an orange ball. He didn't dare to hold back any longer, and his suit of 2-word battle armor also appeared over his body. However, in the face of Yuan and Yui's attack, all of his efforts proved to be futile. As the warped light enveloped his body, he was suspended motionlessly in midair rather than sent flying. He appeared to have been dealt a heavy blow earlier, but in reality, he had unleashed his 6th soul skill, Bounty Ball, which drastically increased the elasticity of his body to significantly nullify the power of Yuan and Yui's attack. However, on this occasion, he could clearly sense that the air around him was being compressed violently. His body and even his suit of 2-word battle armor were being forcibly compressed, and there was no way for him to escape. Only in this instant did he truly understand just how wide a gulf there was between him and Yuan and Yui. She hadn't even donned her suit of battle armor, yet she was still able to completely dominate him. Among the spectators, a burly man was watching the match in an extremely excited manner. That's it. Strength isn't just a one-dimensional mode of attack. Use strength to compress yourself. Compress the air. Compress space. Ha ha ha. That's my girl. Boom. Another violent explosion erupted, and the rotund soul master felt as if he had become a bomb that had just been detonated. Yellow light radiated in all directions out of the rotund soul master's body, and in the next instant, Yuan and Yui had already arrived before him with her right fist situated right in front of his head. Cold sweat instantly soaked through the rotund soul master's clothes, and he was struck by the feeling that he was facing a ferocious beast rather than a human. He had never faced a punch so fearsome before, and the offensive force from that punch had compressed toward him from all directions, making him feel as if even his suit of 2-word battle armor had been on the brink of shattering. Yuan and Yui was also a little taken aback. She hadn't actually thought that she would have been able to defeat her opponent so easily, but as she unleashed that punch, she was struck by a glimmer of enlightenment. It was as if some type of external power had been injected into her fist, instantly deepening her understanding of strength by a significant degree. Unbeknownst to her, this was a result of a better understanding of the power of laws of strength. I concede. The rotund soul master had no intention of continuing. If he were to face another one of those punches, his battle armor would be shattered, and he would be severely wounded as well. Yuan and Yui withdrew her fist, and only after the result was announced by the referee did she depart from the platform. In this instant, she was entirely engrossed in the feeling of that punch, giving it her all. That was the feeling of that punch, just like how her mother had committed suicide for her father, and how her father was willing to follow her to the afterlife. If it weren't for her, her father would already be dead, and her grandfather had only disabled him to prevent him from harming himself. All of her emotions and power intertwined to form a true vortex of power and emotion. Over here, lass. A loud yell drew Yuan and Yui out of her stupor, and she looked up to discover a burly man waving at her with an excited smile. Yuan and Yui was rather taken aback by this. She was sure that she didn't know this man, yet he was waving at her as if they were old acquaintances. She made her way over to the man with her brows slightly furrowed. Are you speaking to me? That punch just now was not bad at all. The man chuckled as he raised a hand to pat her on the shoulder. A wary look appeared on Yuan Yui's face, and she raised her left hand to oppose the oncoming hand. Yuan Yui didn't know who this man was, so she was holding back in order to not hurt him. But as soon as their arms came into contact with one another, she was astonished to sense a burst of suction force from the man's arm that sucked her power away, following which he patted her on the shoulder in a very natural manner. In the instant that his hand came into contact with her shoulder, Yuan Yui's entire body instantly stiffened. If the man had harbored ill will toward her, he would have been able to kill her just now. Just how powerful was this man? It's all right, I'm not your enemy. Wu Ling brought me here, the man said as the air around them condensed to prevent any sound from escaping. Yuan Yui's expression eased slightly upon hearing this. This man was aware of her relationship with Wu Ling, so he clearly wasn't an enemy. Let's go talk somewhere else, the man said with an excited expression, and his gaze made Yuan Yui feel as if he were appraising her as some type of exotic toy. Chapter 1530. Just as the burly man was walking away, he suddenly stopped in his tracks before pressing his right hand into the air. Yuan Yui was standing right beside him, so she could clearly sense that this casual motion from the burly man was making the entire space collapse. And a thought immediately occurred to her as she hurriedly said, "Don't. He's not an enemy." A muffled groan rang out as a figure was squeezed out of thin air, and he stumbled slightly before steadying himself. It was none other than Shishi in disguise. Yuan Yui was competing on this day, so Shishi was naturally in attendance as well. Just as he was about to approach Yuan Yui, he caught sight of the burly man making his way over to her, and he even had the audacity to pat Yuan Yui on the shoulder. Even as her boyfriend, he hadn't been permitted to touch her in such a casual manner. All he had done was unintentionally see her fully nude in the past. "You're an interesting little guy as well, but you've gone down the wrong path," the burly man said with a wistful shake of his head. "Calm down. He knows Wu Ling," Yuan Yui said as she grabbed onto the indignant Shishi. Shishi's expression eased slightly upon hearing this, but he still grumbled in a low voice. "He touched you just now. I couldn't stop him," Yuan Yui replied with a hint of frustration in her eyes. Shishi's heart jolted slightly upon hearing this. He was more aware than anyone of just how powerful Yuan Yui was. Even though she was only a sole Douluo, she could definitely contend with the average title Douluo. The fact that she was unable to brush the man aside indicated that he had to at least be a hyper Douluo, and quite a powerful one at that. They didn't possess spirit domain realm spiritual power as Tang Wu Ling did, so they were unable to ascertain the man's precise level of power, but they were able to make basic deductions. "I'm Yuan Senior. Why can't I touch her?" The burly man said as he cast an unfriendly gaze towards Shishi. "I should be telling you to get away from my Yuanan." Shishi's lips twitched slightly upon hearing this, and his indignation became even more pronounced. For some reason, Yuan Yui was struck by the urge to laugh at the sight of his expression. "I don't recall a senior like you," she said with a perplexed look in her eyes. The burly man replied, "All that matters is that you know about me now. I'm very pleased with you, lass. It truly makes me happy to have a descendant like you." Just as Yuan Yui was struggling to make sense of the situation, Tang Wu Ling's voice rang out beside her ears. "He's telling the truth. Let's discuss this further once we get back." Yuan Yui's heart was completely eased upon hearing Tang Wu Ling's voice, and they followed the burly man out of the sports stadium. A Soul car was already waiting for them there, and the car was fitted with one-way glass, so it was impossible to peer into it from the outside. The interior of the car was very spacious with 2 rows of luxurious seats facing one another, and a small table in between them. Tang Wu Ling was sitting on one of the seats, and as soon as the door was opened, he waved a hand toward Yuan Yui's trio. The 3 of them got into the car, and as the burly man sat down onto the comfortable seat, he couldn't help but remark, "You humans sure know how to pamper yourselves." Tang Wu Ling said in a slightly resigned manner, "Humans are devoid of redeeming features. At the very least, our creative ability is peerless among all races." Yuan Yui and Shishi was still completely in the dark at this point, and Shishi couldn't help but ask, "Who is this, boss? When did Yuan get a senior like this? It seems like there's a new senior from Yuan popping up every day recently." After learning about Yuan Yui's past, Shishi was very sympathetic toward her and wanted nothing more than to share her burden. Tang Wu Ling replied, "This is indeed a senior of Yuan's, and I encountered him by accident. I'll tell you 2 about him as we get back, and you can decide whether you want to let anyone else know." Yuan Yui faltered slightly upon hearing this, then turned to Shishi, who splayed his hands open, and said, "I have no issues. He's your senior. After all, if you don't want me to know, then I can go somewhere else." Not only was the car very luxurious, it offered great privacy, and there was a board separating the passengers from the driver, so they didn't have to worry about the driver overhearing their conversation. "Go ahead, Captain. There's no need to exclude anyone here from the conversation," Yuan Yui said without any hesitation. A surge of warmth immediately flowed through Shishi's heart upon hearing this, and even his cheeks had become slightly flushed. Having been with Yuan Yui for so long, he was naturally very familiar with her personality. She was not an expressive person, especially when it came to emotions, so for her to say something like this was very heartwarming for him. Tang Wu Ling nodded and said, "Senior Zenshin told us that your family descended from a Titan giant ape, but he didn't elaborate on the matter. I'm sure you remember, right?" Yuan Yui nodded in response. Tang Wu Ling continued, "The Titan giant ape is a type of ancient divine beast that has a lot of trouble reproducing even among its own race, and there's no way a human can possess such a martial soul. Hence, your family had to have descended from a human and a Titan giant ape in human form." Yuan Yui's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. "Are you saying I'm not a pure human?" Tang Wu Ling hurriedly shook his head in response. "No, of course not. I'm just giving you some background information. Human and soul beast relationships aren't unheard of. For example, Tang San's wife, soft-bone Douluo Xiaowu, was a soul beast in human form. After all, Yuan Yui's expression eased slightly upon hearing this, but the burly man sitting beside Tang Wu Ling was rather displeased. What's wrong with being a soul beast? Yuan Yui still couldn't understand what Tang Wu Ling was trying to say. Could it be that this burly man had something to do with the heritage of the Titan giant ape? Tang Wu Ling continued, "The truth is that your family was indeed descended from a Titan giant ape in human form, and your surname, Yuanan, stems from the phrase primordial blessing." Yuan Yui nodded in response. "Captain, what exactly are you trying to?" Tang Wu Ling revealed, "This is your ancestor." He knew that this would come as quite a bombshell to Yuan Yui, but he still decided to disclose the truth to her outright. Yuan Yui and Shishi were both stunned into silence upon hearing this, and it made sense, considering how farcical the situation was. After all, anyone would find it quite strange for an ancestor of theirs to suddenly pop up in the flesh. Shishi asked, "You're not making a joke, are you, boss?" Tang Wu Ling replied, "Who would joke about something like this? I'm telling the truth. You 2 have entered the myriad beast plane as well. Do you still remember everything you encountered in there?" Both of them nodded in response. Tang Wu Ling continued, "That was where I met Uncle Erming. As you both know, Tang San was assisted by 2 100,000-year-old soul beasts in the past, the Sky Azure Ball Python and the Titan Giant Ape. Senior Erming is that very same Titan Giant Ape, and he is the earliest ancestor of the Yuanan family." Erming nodded along with Tang Wu Ling's explanation and support while Yuan Yui looked back and forth between Tang Wu Ling and Erming with a blank stare, feeling as if she were in a dream. This was the true Titan Giant Ape and he was her ancestor. I'm not sure what to make of this," Shishi stuttered. Tang Wu Ling didn't speak any further. He had laid out all the information. It was up to Yuan Yui to process it now. A wry smile appeared on Erming's face. "It's all right. I didn't expect to be embraced with open arms anyway. After all, I'm an irresponsible ancestor. If I hadn't met Wu Ling, I wouldn't even have known that I had descendants. I'm already extremely happy to know that all of you exist, so there's no need for you to acknowledge me. I'm very satisfied just to see you and sense my bloodline in your body." He had already sensed his own bloodline in Yuan Yui's body from the moment that he first saw her. Bloodlines didn't necessarily become more diluted through the generations as there was martial soul heritage as well. As long as a martial soul was passed down, the bloodline will also continue to be passed down. As such, even though Yuan Yui's bloodline wasn't very pure, he was certain that she was his descendant. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.